6 p.m., June 10th, 1944. A train grinds to a halt inside Auschwitz for the first time, hours after departing from Budapest. The doors swing open and thousands of people pour out, clamoring and scanning their surroundings. Smoke hangs in the air, mixing with the sharp scent of pungent ash.
I'm not gonna lie, I don't even know if I can say full shit. You know what I'm talking about? The cost might be probably the most evil act humans have ever done.
Violent shouts from guards direct passengers to place their few possessions besides the tracks.
Bro.
Bags containing only the bare essentials and the
it's up there, but sadly, it's not. What do you think it is?
Salvaged from their homes. Standing on the tracks is Lukács. He's just 16 years old. With him is his father, Sandor. They are the last of their bloodline. A few days before, his family had lived in relative comfort. Lukács went to school. His father was a pharmacist, and they resided in a large apartment. Life was good. Yesterday, that all changed. Lukács and his father are filed into a fast-moving line with other men and teenagers. Next to them is another queue with young children, women, and the elderly. At the front, an SS doctor is inspecting the arrivals. Lukács has heard rumors of the atrocities committed by the Nazis, but never in his wildest dreams did he imagine seeing them firsthand. He is standing inside Auschwitz-Birkenau, but what he doesn't realize yet is the true scope of the operation.
Bro.
This complex, covering over 140 hectares, was built to imprison, exploit, and exterminate thousands of people. On the right of this was Auschwitz I, the original prisoner camp established in 1940. Initially used
this is a serious video game.
Resistance and political figures before it became overcrowded and Birkenau took over the responsibilities in 1942. It now serves as offices for the SS operating as the camp's administrative hub. Lukács and his father reach the front. This is no ordinary line. Life or death rests in the doctor's decision.
I'm watching the video. Hiroshima, Nagasaki, Cambodian genocide. Japanese use 7-3. Damn. I ain't gonna lie, I think isn't Japanese 731 the shit where like niggas were raping everybody damn near?
A signal to the left spares them for forced labor. A signal to the right leads to the gas chambers. The doctor pauses.
Well, humans are evil, bro.
Over 80% of the people sent to Auschwitz were murdered immediately at arrival.
Bro.
Just a minute ago, Tomas, who used to race Lukács home from school, and Mrs. Kovac, the elderly neighbor who would bring them warm bread, was deemed unfit to work and sent to the right. The doctor signals left, and guards push them aside. Some may view this as fortunate, but they are unaware of the horrors that lie ahead.
I ain't gonna lie. Did y'all know finding out? Now I'm finna call her. I'm waiting for Cara. This nigga, I think he wants to go live and be live, but he hasn't texted me yet, so I'm just watching shit.
So the newly arrived prisoners are taken to the west.
Have y'all heard? Do y'all know what a Sonder Commando is?
Lukács
I seen a video about that a while ago.
Known as the sauna, and is immediately commanded to strip. He complies. Hair is shaved off his head, arms, and legs. A needle pierces his flesh. Finally, a number is stamped on his skin. In the next room, hundreds of men shower with ice-cold water. Within a matter of minutes, everything that once made Lukács special was stripped away. As Lukács is taken to the barracks, he passes the Kanata buildings. Here was a somber repository of belongings discarded by those who had just arrived, each item telling a story of hope and despair. 30 barracks house the items of the thousands of daily arrivals. Inside, the buildings were filled with shelves.
What is it about?
Workers were ordered to organize everything, sort it, and package it to be sent out to help the Nazi war efforts.
I'm out then.
Lukács is pushed into his new home, his father at his side. The room is cramped, packed with men and boys, all reduced to shadows of their former selves. Rows upon rows of wooden bunks stacked 3 high, each one barely wide enough for a man to lie flat.
They have these niggas living like just animals, bro. I'll be wondering, bro, how did this even happen, bro? Like, how did niggas allow this? Like, in a whole country. This guy, bro.
The area.
And niggas be like, this shit could deadass happen again. Bro, there's some evil niggas out there right now.
Thick, heavy with the stench of sweat, decay, and sickness. The floors are damp and caked with filth.
Bro.
The wooden walls are bare, offering little insulation. A single dim lamp swings from the ceiling, casting just enough light for Lukács and his father to claim a small space on a top bunk.
Shit is sad, bro.
On the hardwood, they fall asleep,
Niggas gave him wood
unaware of
beds.
the chaotic day that awaits them. They are currently located in the Jewish camp. Birkenau holds 300 wooden and brick barracks, divided by prisoner type.
Man,
Women
woman.
are housed in sectors B1A and B1B. While Romani prisoners are in sector B2E,
You can still smell the
other
blood. That's
groups such as
crazy.
homosexual men, criminals, and Jehovah's Witnesses are also segregated. Each group wears a specific badge to indicate their identity. Lukács barely slept. He rises from his bunk. He gets the distinct impression that he needs to ready himself quickly. Everyone shuffles out of the barrack. The rain starts to come down. Lukács feels the cold seeping in. His body shivers as he stands in silence. Around him, shoulders sag under the weight of exhaustion. A man in the row ahead stumbles, collapsing face first into the mud. Not a single prisoner flinches. An SS guard notches something in his book. Time feels heavy for Lukács. Will anyone help him? He thinks. One of the guards barks an order. A prisoner in a similar uniform, but with an armband, hurries forward and without hesitation, grabs the body by the arms. The man is dragged away, leaving a smear of mud in his wake. Lukács knows it. He has just seen death for the first time. It's becoming clear that survival here depends on endurance, attracting little attention and not falling ill. Lukács is assigned to a work group at Auschwitz-Monowitz, and a troubling fear settles in. He doesn't know where his father is going, and deep down, he fears he may never see him again. As he walks with the others to his station, a strange melody begins to waft through the air. Lukács glances around, searching for the source of the music. He spots an orchestra. A group of women stands under a watchful gaze of a conductor, performing songs for the prisoners. Their voices rise in haunting harmonies, contrasting sharply with the grim surroundings. Before they leave his sight, he locks eyes with a young girl playing a flute. She gives him a smile. Lukács smiles back. As he arrives at
I
his
didn't know that was
station,
a thing.
Lukács is shocked. Monowitz is the third and final edition of Auschwitz, a huge factory complex. It primarily produced synthetic rubber and fuel, exploiting slave labor of the camp to support Germany's war efforts. This large industrial complex was dominated by tall brick chimneys emitting thick, black smoke. The factory buildings are massive, with barred windows that give them a prison-like appearance. For the next 6 hours, Lukács works to the bone. Any excuse will result in being shouted at, tormented, or beaten. His group is tasked with offloading and moving sacks full of heavy raw materials from a train cart onto a conveyor belt. As Lukács works, he loses himself in thought to distract his mind from the pain. He wonders why so few people knew of the Auschwitz operations. That's because the camp, being located in southern Poland, about 25 miles from the major city of Krakow, was no accident. Upon creation, it had already established railway connections, allowing the easy transportation of prisoners and supplies. Its proximity to populated areas allowed the camp to remain inhabited, while its relative isolation helped hide it from the world. His thoughts continue. Throughout the morning, 2 other prisoners collapse and are left to die. Unlike earlier, no one is there to take them away. As the clock strikes 12, the work
We moved the most high-ranking members into that. Yeah, I know. I heard about that.
stop. It's time for food. Lukács has passed his ration of watery soup with rotten turnips and potato peels. While Lukács eats, he overhears 2 fellow prisoners discussing rumors about bizarre experiments taking place near the main hospital. Inside one of the rooms is Joseph Mengele, one of the most evil doctors the world has ever seen. Today's task involves working on twins, a particular obsession of his. A few days prior, he infected them with typhus to see how their genes affect their risk of getting sick. Now, he's checking on their progression. If one twin dies, the surviving sibling is killed to allow a side-by-side dissection.
Bro.
His mission is racial purity, and his experiments have no limits. Meanwhile, at Monowitz, the day wears on. Lukács feels his legs growing heavier.
How could you, bro? How could you, bro? How could you, like, you just like, I can't even word it, like, bro. How could you do that to another human being? Let it alone, like, say it was a cow, nigga. Like, I can't even do that to the cow. Like, why do niggas do that? Bro, there's not even a reason, bro.
Each step, the work seems endless. Then it happens. He slows down just for a second. His grip on the material loosens, and a sharp crack echoes as it hits the ground. Without hesitation, a guard rushes over. His face is twisted with rage. Lukács barely has time to react before the blows rain down. The guard doesn't stop.
Damn,
the scream
bro.
would only bring more punishment. Lukács is left crumpled in the dirt, grasping for air. He knows that if he stays down for too long, he will get dragged away. Lukács wishes his dad could be there to comfort him. Suddenly, a horrific thought comes to mind. What if he's dead? As Lukács limps back to his barracks, a group of guards walk in another direction. Their quarters are a very different world, sheltered from the horrors that surround them. This section of the camp is made up of over 30 buildings housing hundreds of SS guards. The barracks are made from brick and include multiple rooms, often equipped with basic furnishings such as beds, tables, and personal storage. The same officers torturing and murdering prisoners every day have access to amenities like proper sanitation facilities and heating. 7 p.m.
They're just trifling, bro.
is walking back into his barrack. Amongst the hundreds of prisoners there, he's using his remaining strength to see if his father is amongst them.
Damn.
Finally, near his bunk, he sees a man hunched over with blood on the floor. It's his dad. He hugs him, but his father is almost too weak to stand.
Wow.
He was assigned to work laying railway tracks, and during the day, someone tried to escape. They were shot and killed on the spot. Almost everyone else in the group was beaten badly, including his father.
What?
Lukács tells his father to stay put and rushes off to get food. On the northern side of the camp was a row of kitchen barracks. There was one or two for each section of the different population groups. Inside, prisoners are preparing dinner for the workers. Lukács arrives and manages to find 2 stale pieces of bread and a small sausage. He quickly hurries back. While his father recovered in his bunk, from the corner of his eye, Lukács noticed a small group of prisoners huddled together on the dirt floor.
Are they playing chess?
They were playing chess. The pieces were crudely fashioned from wood. The board itself was scratched into the dirt floor. Its lines uneven, but clear enough to follow. One of the men saw Lukács hovering over and invited him to join. For a few minutes, they weren't in Auschwitz. They weren't prisoners.
Damn.
They were chess players, strategists, tacticians. For the next few months, these were the only moments Lukács looked forward to.
Bro.
The summer of 1944 brought nearly 2 months of hell for Lukács and his father, as the Nazi war machine rapidly crumbled. In the east, Soviet forces were advancing, reclaiming nearly 100,000 square kilometers of territory. Time was running out for the Nazis, but it was also running out for Lukács and the thousands of other prisoners still trapped inside. 6 a.m., August 1st, 1944. Since their arrival inside nearly 2 months ago, Lukács and his father had faced a brutal life. Little food, no breaks, and constant beatings. Outside, reporting to their work assignment, Lukács realizes his father is barely conscious. Then, he hears a thump.
Bro.
A few meters away, his father collapsed into the mud and is not moving. Lukács paused for a moment, wondering how he could get him to the prisoner's hospital. Many prisoners suffered from tuberculosis, malaria, meningitis, and dysentery. Lukács' dad is suffering from the same fate as countless others: exhaustion mixed with starvation. This section of the camp consisted of over a dozen barracks in repulsive conditions. Camp doctors could not help many of their patients.
What are they
They
supposed to
were
do?
also
Yeah.
prisoners themselves. Even if he was transported to the hospital, the conditions were so squalid that the chances of survival would be extremely low. At night, rats would chew away at the legs of the sick, both those alive and dead.
Dog.
An SS guard approaches Lukasz's father and screams at him to raise himself up. He musters whatever strength he has to shakily stand, but his fate is sealed. The guard gives one signal, and two other guards come to escort him away. He won't be heading to the hospital. Lukasz's father is placed in a steady-moving line entering the crematorium building number 2 in the northwest of the camp, away from the prisoner barracks. These 4 structures are built with deceptive facades to prevent panic about the imminent fate. Inside, the room is bare and windowless, except for one unsettling feature: a series of tall, mesh-covered columns that stretch from floor to ceiling. These columns were the delivery system for Zyklon B, the cyanide-based pesticide used to murder prisoners in horrific numbers. Once the chamber is sealed, SS guards drop the gas pellets through these columns, releasing lethal fumes, filling the room within minutes. Each gas chamber was connected to an adjacent crematorium, where the bodies were immediately disposed of. At the peak of the Holocaust in 1944, the camp murdered somewhere between 3,000 to 5,000 people each day. On this day, that included Lukasz's
What?
father. Between 1944 and January 1945, the Soviets got closer and closer to the German homeland. The SS began to abandon various concentration and labor camps it had built throughout the Eastern Front. In January of 1945, the Soviets entered Auschwitz. The troops see a few thousand prisoners, gaunt and starving. To them, it's liberation. But for Lukács, it was too little, too late. He was 250 miles away. Marching through the dead of winter along with 1,000
they
others,
made them come.
Lukács had managed to make it so far,
Bro.
but his body can't handle it any longer. He collapses on the side of the road, falling face first into the snow. A guard shouts at him to stand, but Lukács no longer has the strength. The last sound he hears is a rifle being cocked, followed by a shot that echoes through the cold air. Auschwitz operated from May 1940 to January 1945.
Bro, he made it so far, bro.
It expanded from the original barracks at Auschwitz I to include Auschwitz-Birkenau and the slave worker factory of Auschwitz-Morowitz. Lukács and his father may be fictional, but they stand for the countless lives shattered by the Nazi regime and its supporters during their merciless terror across Europe. Of the 1.1 million people transported to Auschwitz, over 900,000 were murdered or worked to death shortly after arrival.
1.1 million, bro, 900,000. Bro, that's why we gotta be grateful, bro.
This video has been...
I'm always gonna be grateful for the position I'm in, bro. Because, like, shit could have been so bad, bro. So much worse. I was born 100, 200 years ago. I'm gonna refill my portrait real quick.
Hello everybody, Shrouded Hand here. Human history is filled with dark and disturbing events. The 20th century saw its fair share of atrocities and death. 2 world wars, a major influenza pandemic, numerous genocides and ethnic purges that left a significant portion of the world drenched in blood. And of course, one of the very worst atrocities of the 20th century came during the Second World War. Millions of mainly Jewish people were forcibly confined in Nazi concentration camps and exterminated. One of the very worst of these camps was Auschwitz-Birkenau, also known as the Death Factory. Now, I'm sure that most people are very familiar with the haunting images of skeletal Auschwitz prisoners behind barbed wire. Within Auschwitz-Birkenau, the living conditions for certain prisoners were slightly better than others. However, these improved living conditions often came at a high price. Even in the very depths of hell, one could experience a fate much worse than death.
Thanks, bro.
When a new transport full
And
of
I remember
people arrived at Auschwitz,
I remember seeing certain shit. Like I don't know. I'm not a history head, but I like just find out about certain shit. People who are like Nazis back in the day, they would be like, I only did it because I was told to. And I ain't gonna lie, I'm not saying it's right, but I could see a lot of people doing shit like that. And niggas make songs over this. Yeah, nah. It's why, bro. And then this is why I don't be like, bro, niggas be hating on Jewish people every day, like, oh, they're all rich, bro, they're terrible. I'm like, gang, bro, I just can't, bro. Shit's just fucked. It's fucked in general. I'm never gonna joke on Jewish people. I just can't. The history behind it is too dark. And what was I going on a tangent about? Before I was like, I can't hit on them. Oh, they would be like, yeah, bro, like, oh, I was just following orders. I feel like today, a lot of people, if they were born back then, bro, they would do it just to follow orders. Because if the people, like say the regular Nazi officers, if they didn't do it, they'd probably be shot. Because they're not following orders. So it's a real moral dilemma.
they were unloaded.
Are you picking morals or your life? A lot of niggas are picking their life.
SS officers divided the newly arrived prisoners into two groups. The majority were placed on one side. These consisted of women, children, the elderly and the sick. They were predominantly destined for the gas chambers. Men who appeared strong and healthy were directed to the other side. Many of these men were chosen to become the Sonderkommando, a special force that were tasked with operating the very machinery of death. One Auschwitz survivor would later remark that these men were ripped from their everyday lives and, without warning, they were cast into the very deepest pits of hell. The gas chambers in Auschwitz did one thing. They turned innocent living people into corpses. Hundreds of thousands of corpses. The main job of the Sonderkommando was to empty the gas chambers after the executions, then search the bodies and burn them.
Bro.
Obviously, the men in the Sonderkommando found the job extremely disturbing, but they had two choices: either do the job or face immediate execution.
But that might be actually the worst job in
the Sonderkommando
of all time.
Were divided into 5 groups, each consisting of about 200 men. Each group was assigned to one of the 5 crematoriums. Within these crematoriums, they were further divided into smaller working groups, with each group having a distinct task. The first group was assigned to work on the loading ramps when new transports arrived. Their job was to ensure that panic didn't break out, so they were forced to deceive the newcomers by telling them that they were headed for showers and disinfection. To maintain calm among these new arrivals, the Sonderkommando inmates would offer seemingly helpful tips. For example, they'd advise the newcomers to tie their shoes together after undressing and to remember to place their clothes in the changing room. Many of the Sonderkommando avoided looking into the newcomers' eyes. They knew that these people were destined for the gas chambers and there was no coming back. One survivor's account describes how a man was tasked with leading the new arrivals from the train to the gas chamber. This man suddenly recognized his cousin in the crowd, and he was faced with an impossible dilemma. Should he reveal the terrifying truth to his cousin, or should he just maintain the lie? He knew that whatever he did, the outcome would be the same, so he chose to lie. He told his cousin the same thing he told every new inmate, that they were simply going for a shower. He then ensured that his cousin stood directly under the hole where the Zyklon B pellets were dropped in, hoping that this would mean his cousin would have a swift death. And of course, the Sonderkommando would also know that it wasn't a swift death. They would hear the screams of people from within the gas chamber going on for 15-20 minutes before they went silent.
It's time.
After that, the gas chamber would be ventilated.
Give me like 10 minutes to finish the video.
Group of the
You live?
Sonderkommando would get to work. when the door was opened, the Sonderkommando would be faced with rows and rows of dead people. Often the people were packed so tightly into the chambers that the bodies remained standing after death. At times the corpses were horrifically entwined. This was either due to death convulsions or because a panic-stricken individual tried to climb atop another in a desperate attempt to escape the gas. According to survivor accounts, there were around 800 corpses in a gas chamber each time. The Sonderkommandos had to use canes to hook the bodies under their chins and drag them out.
Bro.
At first, they approached this task carefully.
Bro, what is this?
trying to be
What would doing
respectful
this shit
of the
every
dead.
day do to your mind? I watched the real after Loki. I feel like it's Loki fucked up to watch like a funny reel in the middle of the video and get back to it. I want to finish it at least. But like, what does this do to your bro? These are like not your like relatives, but like this is your people, like your race. This is a
But
baby, bro.
as time and repeated exposure dulled their sensitivities, and they grew increasingly indifferent to the task. The bodies would be taken from the chamber, placed into a lift, and taken up to the upper level. On the upper level, another group of Sonderkommando had to cut the hair from every single body. The hair had to be removed before the bodies could be put into the ovens. This group were also the ones tasked with searching the bodies for jewellery and gold. One Sonderkommando would later confess that they all knew where to search for valuables. There's only so many places where a naked person can hide a golden ring or a diamond. After the bodies were shaven and searched, they were sent to the next group of Sonderkommandos. This group was known as the dentists. They were each equipped with a pair of dentistry pliers. They examined the mouths of every corpse, searching for gold teeth. These teeth were extracted, and the gold was later smelted into bars and collected by the SS. After the dental examination, the Sonderkommando divided the bodies into two piles, one for adults and another for children. The final group of Sonderkommando operated the ovens. They laid two corpses in front of each of the 5 ovens, then stacked them onto a metal stretcher. They then placed a child's corpse on top and shoved the bodies into the oven. After the bodies had been cremated, the Sonderkommando would remove the ashes and dump them into a nearby river. One survivor recounts a story of an inmate working at the ovens. At some point, this inmate stopped loading the bodies onto the stretcher and stood motionless, gazing at the corpses. After a prolonged pause, he resumed his work. An SS officer who was stood nearby asked why the man had stopped. Another inmate replied, "He's just recognised his wife." And these kind of incidents where the Sonderkommando recognised their murdered family members weren't rare. The crematorium ovens were burning day and night, thousands of people passing through them each day. The trauma of it was so overwhelming that it would shatter even the most resilient of spirits.
How couldn't it, bro? I don't know if anybody's strong enough in the world, bro. Maybe there is one or two niggas, but like to just keep your mind intact, bro, for months on end of doing this.
The Sonderkommando were isolated from the other prisoners in the camp. Their own quarters were located within the crematoriums. In some cases, they slept right above the gas chambers. They were officially forbidden to communicate with any other inmates. However, some contacts were made. And as I suggested at the beginning of the video, some inmates had better conditions than others, and the Sonderkommando were kept reasonably well fed, and the SS knew that they needed their strength to be able to carry out their tasks. They weren't starved and tortured to the same extent of the other inmates. This marginally better treatment of the Sonderkommando had another purpose. As the Sonderkommandos had to greet the new arrivals at the camp, the prisoners would be greeted by someone who looked relatively well fed. It would give the illusion that things weren't too bad. Their living quarters were also slightly better than the regular inmates, and their work indoors shielded them from a lot of the harsh elements. However, this treatment was somewhat of an illusion. Their job was so terrible that their minds would break. Many would go insane from the horrors of what they witnessed. and to keep the Sonderkommando from telling anybody about what was happening in the crematoriums, every 2 to 3 months the Sonderkommandos would be rounded up and executed. There was always a new trainload of young men who could be used to replace them. Tragically, one of the first tasks of a newly recruited Sonderkommando was to burn the bodies of their predecessors. Another inmate, a man from the main camp, recalled how one rainy evening he found himself near the camp's mortuary, which was situated in the basement of one of the blocks. He noticed a line of men waiting at the mortuary's entrance. When he asked them what they were doing, he received a chilling response. One of the men pointed at the door at the bottom of the stairs and explained, "Down there, behind that door, is death. This is our end. Behind these doors, the SS are ending us." The inmates asked them why they weren't running or
I don't know where
hiding
Pummy's
or
been at.
trying to do anything to save themselves. The man replied,
Their minds are gone,
"We
bro.
are the Sonderkommando. We've been broken. We've wasted away. This is our way out of this hell." Only a few Sonderkommandos survived the war. Morris Venezia was one of these survivors. In his testimony, he recalls the day when transports of Jewish people.
Bro,
from
could you
Hungary
imagine what he's
arrived.
seen?
It was some 30,000 people. The ovens had reached their maximum capacity,
Yeah, I'm
and
down.
they couldn't accommodate the sheer number of dead bodies. The Sonderkommando were forced to dig pits behind the crematorium, and fires were lit in the pits to burn the excess bodies. Sometimes miracles happened as well, although they were short-lived. One Sonderkommando recalled how a baby survived the gas chamber with its head squeezed beneath its mother's arm.
Damn.
The baby was later shot by an SS officer and its body thrown onto the pile.
Bro.
In another instance,
The
a man
niggas-
regained consciousness just as he was about to be dragged into a fire pit. The man seemed confused and asked what was going on. There was no time to return him to the gas chamber, so on the orders of the SS, the Sonderkommando had no choice but to just throw him alive into the fire pit. After the final transport from Hungary had been exterminated and the bodies burned, it became clear that there would be no work left for the Sonderkommando, at least for some time. They knew that a purge was imminent. Soon they would be executed too. And so inmates working at Crematorium 4 decided to plan a revolt. The men working in Crematorium 4 were busy making makeshift knives and homemade hand grenades. These grenades were constructed from tin cans and black powder that had been smuggled in by women working in the aircraft repair facility outside the camp. On the 7th of October 1944, one of the Sonderkommandos walked up to an SS officer and smashed him over the head with a hammer. This was the sign to start the uprising, and suddenly the camp erupted into chaos, with prisoners surrounding their guards with knives, hammers and black powder bombs. Apparently one of the SS officers, who was known to be particularly sadistic, was rounded up, thrown into one of the ovens and burned alive.
What are you watching? This is like a
Some prisoners
documentary.
managed to cut a hole in the fence and escape from the camp, but unfortunately their victory was short-lived. The uprising was quelled, all the escapees were quickly rounded up, the Sonderkommando were executed, as were the
They did let
who
them off
helped
easy.
them in making the bombs. By January of 1945, the Soviet army were rapidly advancing, and so plans were set in motion to liquidate the Auschwitz concentration camp.
Bro, liquidate.
As the front lines grew nearer, all the crematoriums in Auschwitz were blown up in an attempt to destroy any evidence of the
I did that shit.
genocide. The Nazis knew that any witnesses would also have to be executed. Just before the camp's evacuation, a final selection took place. Those inmates who still appeared healthy were separated. They were marched to another concentration camp in Germany, an event that would later be known as the Auschwitz Death March. The sick and weak inmates, along with the remaining members of the Sonderkommando, were separated from this main group. Their impending fate was no secret. They knew that they were about to die. However, due to the general chaos and the apparent disarray of the SS, a few of the Sonderkommandos managed to discreetly change groups and mix in with those who were being taken to the other camp. Those who escaped this final selection were still in grave danger. An SS officer could recognize them at any moment. The challenge of being forced to march hundreds of kilometers in the harsh Polish winter was ever present, and each day this marching group would leave behind dozens of frozen corpses. Some inmates managed to escape during this death march, whilst others reached the concentration camps deep within German territory, and there they endured further months of torment. Several thousand inmates had been forced to work in the Sonderkommando, but by the end of the war, less than 20 had survived.
Bro, man.
Out of the surviving Sonderkommandos, only a handful decided to testify, and for good reason. Initially, these men were seen as being Nazi collaborators. However, as time went on, more and more testimonies from Holocaust survivors emerged, and with it came a better understanding of the kind of predicaments that the Sonderkommandos were faced with. After the war, several notes were found within the ruins of the Birkenau crematories. These notes described the horrific experiences of the Sonderkommando inmates, and these notes have served as some of the most striking evidence of the genocide. And that was the story of the Sonderkommando. A bit of a different subject for my channel, but I hope you found that
That shit is
informative.
dark. Or Ted Bundy shit. I watched some more